Boom, we are recording. So what's up, everybody? My name's Kyle. For those of you that still don't know, welcome to step one. And I have two really good friends of mine, Berachah and Ruthie. Can you guys
Hi.
can you guys introduce yourselves? Just say like your age and I don't know, something else.
Okay. I'm Berachah. I'm 25. And I'm also the mother of two little boys.
Yeah.
I'm Lindsay. I'm 16. What's up, guys? This is Future Kyle. Apparently, Apple Pods only have one mic in them, so you can't really hear Ruthie, but I suggest you wear headphones, or it's going to be a hard time to hear. I'm going to try and add subtitles wherever she's, like, impossible to hear, but she has a lot of really good stuff to say, so just slap some headphones and you'll be lit.
I can't hear you, sis. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Talk louder.
Yeah, speak up. I'm sorry. I love you.
I'm Lindsay, and I'm 16.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay. First I met Ruthie through a church that I can't name because we're putting this online. But I was a youth leader at another church, and I met Ruthie, I think, my sophomore year of college, and that was pretty cool. It was kind of weird how I got transitioned into that church, but that's a story for another time. But I met Ruthie, we joked around, she was funny, and then I was like, cool, this was dope, this is fun, this is great, but I'm transferring churches because I feel like I need to learn a little bit more about X, Y, and Z. And then Ruthie's like, oh, I go to that one too, because little did I know.
She goes to all of them.
Exactly. She went to every single youth group in the area. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess I could go to any church and you're just going to be there. So then I transfer over. And then I joined the team, and that's where I meet Berachah. And at first, I mean, you're gonna get mad at me, but it's cool because I'm behind a camera, so it's fine.
Oh, jeez.
I think you already know where this is going. But I met Berachah, and I immediately thought like, oh, that's Ruthie's mom.
I knew that was coming.
I know. But then
it's okay.
Thank you for not punching me for that. It's partially because you can't, because once again the camera. But yeah, so I met her, and I just started hanging out with the both of them, and they're really funny, and it was really dope. And then I started talking to them a little bit more about like stuff that was going on in my life, and talked about like my disability. I'll do a whole video on that. I don't feel like explaining that right now, but I can't drive for various reasons, and your family was like super integral in my whole like college career of like just moving and getting around places. And especially when I lived on my own, it was like, hey, groceries are, I guess, expensive. Yeah. And I need to get to those grocery stores. I don't know how I'm gonna do that. And then you were like, oh, I'll just drive you, it's fine. And in my head, I'm just like, oh, no, like you shouldn't. And you're like, hey, shut up. Cool. So get in the car. Yeah. So it was really cool. And then from that, I met your parents, and just seeing you guys interact was dope for me. And I know like the different experience when you live in the house, but for me, it was really dope just because like I grew up in predominantly Black neighborhoods, but I went to schools that were like diverse, white. And yeah, love y'all. Not y'all, I love y'all too, the white people that are watching. But I unfortunately, because of that, because of the culture that I was like raised up in, I realized there was some things that I couldn't do that were, I guess, what I thought to be like a part of me. Like I was loud very naturally. I don't think I'm a naturally quiet person, but like when I'm joking around and I'm trying to be funny, I'm like very loud, as you guys know, and I laugh stupid and all that stuff. and like even certain like slang I would use and just whatever, just Ebonics, essentially just the way I would talk. People would just be like, oh no, so I had to put on like a certain like, hello, how are you?
Right.
Hi, 11. Yeah, in order just to be accepted and to be able to like enter certain conversations, like people wouldn't take me seriously otherwise.
Right.
But being with your family was cool because I didn't have to like do any of that. And as these people like maybe don't know, like your family is like blackity black, and it's fun.
Real black.
Real black. And it was funny because like we would go to like a restaurant or whatever, and then just be like a random statistic about something having to do with like social justice or whatever. And it's like, oh, did you know that so and so and so and so? Did you learn about so and so? And I'm like, I don't even know who that is. Dang.
Right.
But,
yep, that's them.
I wanted to ask you guys, I can only imagine, like, that's both a blessing and like a little bit of a hardship growing up in a family that's like wokety woke in a world that is like sleep.
Right.
So how has that been, I guess, growing up for both of you in a family that's super woke?
Right.
For lack of better words.
For me, at times it was like, I don't want to say stressful, like in a sense, like going into school and even like once we started to get into like history and starting to get into all those different things and like all things that they were leaving out drove me crazy. So I was very much the kid who, like, if somebody made a wrong statement in class, like I was the person who called them out. I was like, you're incorrect.
Right.
Like,
no.
Which definitely led to a lot of conflict with people. Because people don't like being told they're wrong. Or even like teachers. Like I've said stuff to teachers before and they're like, oh. And then they kind of like shut down and got quiet.
Right.
And
well, they hated you.
Why do you know this? And I don't. Which was always interesting. But yeah, that's kind of how it was.
Originally, so when we started off living in Mississippi, and we lived in a rather small town in Mississippi that was very segregated by partial choice. And so most of the white side of town, honestly, they all went to private schools or schools that were affiliated with churches. And then there was the black side of town, and all those kids went to like the public schools. And so my parents made the choice to homeschool us when we were younger. And so there was always like this divide in our realities because we would be around our family and such, and it was like very woke, all about it, black cookout, like the real deal. But then we were also in homeschool groups where we were the only black kids that were there. And oftentimes we went to places in Mississippi where like our family was like, are you kidding me? Like, this is not places that we belong or are allowed. Like, it's not really even that safe. And so it was interesting growing up in a woke household while also having this parallel universe in which we were taught things that weren't necessarily available to everyone else that was in our family or in our circles, like in our home. And so I think it was interesting in that aspect of being woke because it's like, you know, you're woke in your heart, but like, how much are the people around you able to understand? And if you speak a certain way because you're taught a certain way and you don't necessarily, when you're in school, like you learn to talk like the people you're in school with.
Right.
But we learned to talk from the people that we went to homeschool with while also being woke because of the house that we were in. So it's this weird parallel of like, this group thinks that we talk white enough to fit in, while this group thinks we're woke enough, but we still talk white. So do we fit in? Like, where do we fit in? You know? So that was always like kind of a weird thing growing up in our household, in the way they dealt with being woke.
Yeah, I dealt with that, unfortunately. I went to like a magnet school, so it was like a lot of, you had to enter like a lottery to get in.
Right.
And they had to hit a quota. Just no hate towards anyone at that school. It was pretty much like, oh, we have 5 Black kids. That's enough. So
Right.
it was pretty much like that, and I think, I don't know. There was like a little bit of I don't want to say like I was being fake or whatever, but like I was trying to, I guess, fit in the way I talked. Like I feel like people, when I talked originally, like, the first day was wild. Like I was just trying to talk like normal and what I thought was normal, but then people were just very much like not for that. So then I eventually
Right.
like how I speak more so now, and yeah, I got accepted, but then I went back home to my own neighborhood. People were like, "Oh, you talk white," or "You're an Oreo," or something like that. You would say other words that I can't say on here, but like, yeah, it wasn't it wasn't the most loving environment. So like, I feel that 100%. So, as a parent, Ruthie, I mean, you can speak on the different part of it, but Berachah, as a parent, you're raising 2 Black boys, which is awesome, but how has living in a woke family, I guess, affected the way that you are trying to raise your kids now? Because I think, like, before you answer, like, watching you with your kids is awesome, at least for me, and like it's redemptive for me, just because the way that you, I don't want to say your kids' names on here, but like the way you talk to your oldest,
It's okay.
I still, if you say it, then that's fine, but I won't say it. But the way you talk to your oldest, whenever he's going through like an emotional, like whatever, like he's reacting to something or whatever, the way I've seen other Black moms react to their kids when they go through like an emotional reaction, whether they're like getting really angry or really upset or really sad, is like shut up, like be a man about it or whatever. Like I think our race is a pretty like proud race where it's like you're expected to do X, Y, and Z, and if you're not hitting those things, and you're not like a real fill in the blank. But the way that I see you talk to your oldest, especially when he's going through that stuff, is just like, oh, you're sad? That's okay, I get it. Yeah. And I'm like, yo, that's revolutionary. But
Right.
yeah, back to the question, like how has, I guess, being raised in your family affected the way that you parent?
So I think it's very important to understand the cycle of toxic masculinity when it comes in the Black community, and just the place that men have had or haven't had in our communities. I grew up on my mom's side specifically, her parents were together, and they had a marriage for a long time. And my grandfather was very hands-on. He was very like always doing stuff with us, always rooting us on, giving lots of hugs, giving lots of kisses, like very like present my whole life. And the same with my dad, just being very like present, always being present, and even for a while being like a stay-at-home dad. So like Ruthie growing up, like he was the one who cooked. Like that's the one that she knew who cooked and cleaned and like took her to activities, which isn't like necessarily the norm or the one that you see in the Black community. And I think when I started to see like just that, you know, every person is different, and if you have emotions, that doesn't make you less of a man. If you are, even if you're more calloused as a woman and maybe not necessarily what womanhood is thought of, like that doesn't make you less of a woman. And so I think it's important that as you look at a child and you see their personality starting to form, you affirm what masculinity or growing into masculinity will look like for that child. And that's going to be different based off of their personality, based off of who they are. But especially when it comes to my older son, he has a lot of emotions and he knows how to express them very well. And so we have always this like back and forth of like expressing our emotions. What do we do with our emotions? How do we not even just make things productive, but how do we not let this turn to just anger? Let's talk it through. What does that look like? He went through a period of time where he was very angry. like super, super angry. Ruthie can attest to this. And it was really interesting walking through it with him, because I started to realize that a lot of times before people get to their phase of anger, just with life, with whatever's happening inside of themselves, there's so many different days where they'll have really bad days. They'll have really sad days. There'll be stuff that's connected. There'll be a lot of signs. And I think it's important, especially in the Black community, where having emotions is seen as a sign of weakness, specifically in men, to pay attention to the signs before they get to the point of anger, and then to teach our children how to process through their life, process through the things that are happening, so we don't get to that point. There are going to be times, I mean, even when it comes to like school and stuff like that, there's like a statistic that says like most of the time you lose little boys by the age of 7 when it comes to school. Because whether it be if they're hyperactive, like they're seen as bad and they're not properly like diagnosed or given help or tools, or even if they're just doing the same thing as little kids, there's a big discrepancy when it comes to the way that little Black boys are dealt with in a school environment versus not. And a lot of times that builds up anger in little kids, because if you see injustice in your everyday life as a child, and you see other children who are being treated differently than you for the same thing, it creates this emotion. And so you go home and you act out, and maybe it just looks like you're acting out, but there's something else there, right, you know? Yeah, so I think it's really important, just like as a Black mother, but just as a mother in general, to notice the signs before you get to the anger, and then to teach them how to process through it.
That's good. That's really good. Pop off. When you're writing your book, by the way, do you know like the release date or? Okay. Ruthie. Oh, what will you gonna give a date? Oh, pop off. What?
No, I don't have a date. No.
Cool. So look out for that, guys. Anyway, Ruthie, I was gonna ask. You're also very emotionally intelligent. Which that face says it all. I love it. But whether you know it or not, you are very emotionally intelligent. I know that you have like you get angry or whatever, or upset or whatever, but like you are, especially in youth group, watching you back in the other church as well as the one that we're in now. You're someone that like coaches all your friends through their stuff. I've seen you with your friends be someone that's a mediator, someone that calls people to like peace, which is really admirable, and I love that. Can you hear me? No, you can't.
Yeah,
you can. Cool. I've had so many problems since I started this, like it's bad. But anyway, I want to ask you, how did you, I guess, become someone that is emotionally intelligent, someone that's able to like de-escalate those things and be someone that calls out emotions for what they are?
For me, it was a lot. I was, even like when I was younger, I was aware of what I was feeling, but for a long time I didn't know how to like process or understand it, as well as like moving in emotions with other people, if that makes sense.
Right.
And when it came to I think part of it was like something that was just kind of in me, and that it took like me beginning to recognize what I was feeling, because for a long time I didn't acknowledge what I was feeling, and then once I was able to process my own feelings, it helped me identify like a situation where like one of my friends is getting upset, but it's like, this doesn't make sense why you're getting upset about this. And then it's kind of like me taking and being willing to like have a conversation and like be like, hey, like what's going on? Or like even developing like some kind of relationship with someone, like even if it's something small, like just being willing to let someone know that you're there. A lot of the time if people trust you, it's a lot easier to diffuse the situation. So if my friend is like blowing up, or like you can see it starting to like build, it's like a hey, like I know this is going on, like do you want to talk about it? Just even giving them the space to be open with what they're feeling, and in a safe space where they know that you're not going to like judge them or put them down or like tell the whole world about what's going on. Gives you a easier, like a higher chance of being able to choose the situation well.
Yeah. No, that's good. I think the reason I asked both of those questions is that, like, I'll start with me and then I'll go over to you guys. But anger is something that I struggle with, an emotion that I really don't like, but is very much in me. So there were some moments back in high school as well as like after high school where I would get like a little angry and I would raise my voice a little bit, or I would respond in a way that where I'm from is normal, or like if I don't act that way, then it's like, what's wrong with you? Like, you better step up, like kind of a thing like that. And I always am fearful of showing my angry side around people that aren't from our culture, just because the narrative that I get when I do that is the crazy, angry black man that's like big and he's gonna hurt somebody, and oh, calm down, Kyle, like, oh my God, like what's going on, like kind of a thing. And it was never like a normal thing, but that's me as a black man. And I've noticed for females in our race, it's been like amplified to the nth degree, where if a black woman gets angry, not only do you get the normal like, oh, you're a black person angry, I'm scared, but now it's like you as a female, now you're bossy, now you're other words I can't say. In this world, as a black woman, how do you express your emotions or feel or even if you don't, like how do you express your emotions, I guess, living in America? And how does it feel? Like, can you walk us through like your a day in your mind?
You can go.
I'm excited for this, but okay, go.
I've gotten really good at filtering myself.
Okay.
And developing like, okay, how much can this person take? Like, because if I let out too much and what's really going on in my head, it's not going to be such a great situation. So just being able to like see like, okay, this person is acting this way, but if I let what I'm feeling completely take over, then they're not going to respond to what I'm saying. Right. Or everything about the situation is not going to go well. So I've just gotten really good at reading the situation and filtering what I'm feeling. Doesn't always work.
That sounds exhausting.
It is.
How is that translated into your relationship with like teachers and adults? Because I know like with youth, I've seen it a bunch where it's just been like, and then you say what you mean, but then like also adding in the element of like you're younger. How is that? Because that's like another filter that you gotta like slap on there.
Yeah, it's usually a lot of like completely like when it comes to like teachers and adults, it's like this level of like, I was taught like you have to show these people respect, right? Because they are older than you,
right?
So it's like I can't, like I have no place to say anything about the situation. I just kind of have to suck it up and keep on going, which for a long time didn't really go well for me in particular. Mm-hmm. Like me and teachers don't work too great at all. But I kind of got to the age where I was like, I don't really care. And I was like, all right, I can't say anything, but I'm not gonna like shove it all down. So I speak my mind to the point, like I don't let myself get disrespectful, but I do in some way keep close to my mind.
Pop off, Berachah.
So I don't have a filter.
Yes.
Minimal filter.
Go off.
And so for me, I always have this fear of saying anything at all because I don't really, whatever's going to come out isn't going to ever sound that politically correct or necessarily, there's not going to be much of a like soft touch to it. It's just going to be straight. And I think in a lot of places, so there's a parallel because, you know, in work, in any place in life, they're male dominated. And so if you're going to be a woman and be successful in any area, there's a certain level of aggressiveness, to be honest, that you have to bring to the table. But it's interesting because there's always this, we want you to be aggressive to get to this place, but at the same time, we don't like you because you're aggressive.
Right.
And so specifically as a Black woman, it has created, I have places where I feel safe and places where I know that I will be alone. And like, I've chose to kind of speak my mind regardless. But there have been a lot of areas of deep hurt when it comes to being a Black woman in America. And I think it's even rougher. Like I was thinking the other day about like doing job interviews and stuff like that. And like, I think the first time I've had like, I don't know, 5 or 6 jobs at this point at 25. And I think I've only gone to one job interview with natural hair because like, that's not acceptable. Like, it's not something that people look well upon because you can't be abrasive and also not look like the status quo.
Like, well, you're asking too much. Yeah.
Right. Like, it's just, you're taking the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, for me personally, I think it's always been a struggle and like kind of a back and forth. In high school, I took a lot of AP classes, and 9 times out of 10, I was the only Black person there. And AP content is not diverse. Like the history, the literature you read, nothing is that diverse. So when I would bring anything diverse to the table, or I would do my presentations on something that wasn't what the majority was doing, it was always looked at as almost slightly less intellectual. And so being a Black woman and standing up for these things, it was always just kind of like in your face, a little abrasive. People might like it, they might not. You might get a good grade, you might not. Because what's the content, what they were looking for? You kind of don't know. But it's like kind of always a thing where you kind of have to step out and like have courage. And I think a lot of times Black women are looked at as like very hard in a lot of senses. But I think a lot of that really just comes from having to have tough skin because 97% of people don't like us. Like,
unfortunately, yeah.
So like I don't know, you have to be really strong in who you are and be pretty confident and be okay with other people not liking you and almost being like, don't like me. That sounds bad. Like, don't like me. And so, yeah, I don't know.
I respect that a lot. Like, I guess I'm wondering, as someone that's not super comfortable in his own skin, both as like a Black man and just as a person, I'm still like growing into it. I guess, how'd you get there? Like, how'd you get to become a person that was just like, hey, this is who I am, and if you don't like it, that's fine. Like, it's whatever. Like, how'd you become that person?
I think a lot of it came from trial and error of just following my gut and realizing that, like, I know myself. I know situations that are good for me. Like, I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm talented at. And, like, trusting that. Because, you know, a lot of times over the years, like, times when I haven't spoken up or times when I haven't used my voice is when I didn't feel like my voice was important or I second-guessed my voice. So I think the more that I felt resolute in, like, my decisions and realizing, like, I have something to say, and like I also know myself, and also like as a Christian woman, like I know what the Lord tells me.
Right.
So at the end of the day, like if I know all these things, and if I'm walking in alignment with them, like even if I look really abrasive, I know the truths that I know, and I have to stick with them. And I think, you know, I always look at like there's so many specifically like what that I think of is like women in the Bible who women, no one likes women. I mean, no one really likes women. So there are a lot of instances when you look at Esther, when you look at Ruth, there are so many different times when like if women didn't stick with their gut and if they didn't believe or back the words that they said, like nothing would ever be done. So like for me, it's like we're either gonna get this done or we're not. And like my voice could be the thing that stands in the way of it getting done or not. So I might as well speak, you know? But I think it's trial and error. And like sometimes it's not gonna work out well. And sometimes people aren't gonna receive it well. And part of that sometimes is because sometimes we are before our time. And so I think like a big thing with that is just like learning even like as people who see life from a lens that's counter culture, counter American culture, counter all these things, learning to speak your voice loud, even if it's not accepted, sometimes it's just because it's prophetic, you know? And so I think as Black women, like, if you're speaking against a culture that doesn't love you, like, and you're speaking equality, like, you're automatically speaking something that is for the future. No one's gonna like it. Speak it anyway.
Pop off. You got a t-shirt. Actually, though. Okay. So, I guess to transition into the fun part. Yeah. One thing that I've also noticed, especially like it's not like this is a brand new thing. Like I've been seeing this for years, but once again, now that we're in the spotlight again, people are being more vocal. And unfortunately, like I've seen some really negative, ignorant statements from people that are outside of our race. But then I look on Facebook to someone that's the same skin tone as me, some people that are even from the same area as me, like you grew up down the street, and they're talking wild about other people in our same race. And predominantly, it's usually men talking against women. And it's frustrating, at least for me as a guy, just because it's like, and not even as a guy, just as a person, a Black person that's like, hey, we're going to go out there and we're going to say like, hey, all Black lives matter. Or like, hey, we're going to stick up for one another. But then it's like, oh, not you, and not you, and not you. Oh, and also not you. Like kind of like it's a slap in the face at that point. But as someone that this is affecting, a Black women, how is that, like, how have you been able to navigate that? Because once again, this is not a new thing, so you've had to navigate it for years. When it comes to Black men disrespecting Black women, I guess, how have you responded? What kind of experiences have you had? Just to get a little insight on that.
I've definitely heard like a whole lot of like teenage boys, like Black teenage boys walking around the halls. They're always for me, for a long time, I didn't really like it didn't resonate in my head. Like my brain didn't like go like, oh, this is a thing. Because of the area that we grew up in. Like it's not super I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So for me, and it wasn't like a huge like topic of discussion because I was younger when like these conversations were happening with like Berachah and our brother, and so it took like getting into high school as a freshman, like walking around. I was like, why are all the white guys dating Black girls? It like didn't like I was like, what is happening? And then after a little while, I started hearing the comments that these guys were making in school. And I was like, and my words are never kind. And I cannot repeat them. When I hear those comments, those are the kinds of things that cause me to lose that filter that I developed. because it's like genuinely enraging. And then the thing.
Oh, this is funny. Good, sorry, go.
And then even like the things that I've seen like posted on social media, or it's all just very frustrating.
This is such a hard thing to talk about because like it's like one of those really nuanced things, you know, in a lot of ways, because like I think like love who you love, but like don't talk badly about us in the process. I don't know. I think it's so I also though like it's kind of I think the biggest thing for me is like they won't like Black men don't tend to defend us.
Right.
We're supposed to be seen almost as like invincible, like take care of it yourself. Like, but why didn't you do this? But why didn't you do that? Like you should have figured it out. Which is like, I don't know. It's like it's very wounding, I think, in a lot of ways, just to see the fact that like we could be in really bad spots. We could be in trouble. Like I've seen lots of cases where women have been like being domestically abused, even like in front of people's faces and stuff like that. Or just like even like women in their family and stuff like that. And like, I don't know. I see people, I don't know. I see like other races, in not very tactful ways, make sure that their women were taken care of.
Right.
And defending their women, even if it's with their rifles and shotguns. But in the Black community, a lot of the time, Black women are kind of left out to dry in a lot of instances. And I think like when I looked at this whole movement and things, it feels so hard to like really talk about Black Lives Matter, even just like embracing the culture and stuff, when we have like a lot of self-hate, even amongst ourselves. Even just as a single Black mom, there's so many stigmas that come behind that. And in a lot of like, even within our own culture, like it's automatically you're bitter, you're ghetto, you're this, you're that. Like there's so many different things that are automatically tied to the woman, and you're seen in a negative light, and then there's like no support, there's no backing, which has really been difficult, I think, for me as a Black woman. It's just like navigating what it means to move in a culture where our men don't defend us, where our men don't protect us. I read it like a statistic, and I was talking to a friend about it one day, that like Black women are the least likely to get married.
Yeah.
Which is really rough. Like that's a really scary reality. And I mean, there's a group of people that believe it's because we're really loyal to a race of men that don't love us. And I mean, there's incarceration, there's mass incarceration is a big portion of that as well. But very often, like Black women don't feel comfortable, or they feel disloyal if they date outside of their race. And so as Black women, like there's always this, you know, we want to stay with our waist. Like we love our men, we want to support our men. We know their struggle, we know the things that they go through. And so we want to be able to stand behind them. And even, I mean, we have little Black boys, we like, it's right. Like, it's all in us, you know? So like, we want to stand behind that. And we want to be able to pass that on, but at the same time, like 9 times out of 10, they're not gonna want us. Maybe like temporarily, but like not to settle down with, you know. Also, I don't want to take too long, but like the over sexualization of Black women is so prevalent. And it's so problematic. And I think like, even when you just look like at hip hop and rap culture and all the things that surround it, like there's always a certain look, there's always a certain thing, but it's very objectifying. But they won't support or there's so much backlash behind people like Jill Scott or all these different people that come in all different looks and shapes, and they're always kind of pushed to the side, and not necessarily maybe the thing that's seen as like the most mainstream. Like, we respect it from afar, or we're cool with it from afar, but we're not going to embrace that, because like that would be embracing something besides the glamorous over sexualization of a Black woman, which is, I don't know, the whole thing is just kind of scary and terrifying. You saw like even people's reaction to Breonna Taylor versus like all the other people that are happening. Like, Black women die all the time just as much, but like they're never gonna be the frontliner. It's never gonna be a thing.
When this whole thing happened about like George Floyd, and don't get me wrong, like it's tragic what happened to him, and like the fact that the whole entire thing from beginning to end is like on video, and they still like took dumb long to get this dude, like the people that were involved, like in jail. I was kind of confused for a number of reasons as to why his death was the one that made everybody like go off and be like, oh, this is not okay, like da 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 da. Like within our community, we've like protest a bunch, but usually it's like Trayvon Martin or Eric Gardner or like a whole bunch of other men that like have gone through like these really horrible things and they're caught on video, and it's like, dang. But then you see stories like, specifically the one that bothered me, especially about this one, was Breonna Taylor, where she's like literally, with all these other things, they were like, oh, well, Trayvon Martin was trespassing, so he shouldn't have done that. And Ahmaud Arbery was trespassing, so he shouldn't have done that. And George Floyd possibly gave away like a fake $20 bill, and that's wrong, right? Like, sis was sleeping in her bed. Like, she wasn't doing anything wrong. It was this completely like mistaken identity. There was nothing that could be justified about this. She was an EMT. She was saving lives.
Right.
And I don't, at least in media, I don't see as much coverage for her. I don't see as many like people like going off for her. And I feel like now people are waking up to that, which is like, okay, it's cool, like sounds good, but like I remember having a conversation with someone where they were telling me that they were worried about me and me being like a Black man, being tall and whatever. And I'm like, what about you? Like, you're Black too. And no offense, like they'll shoot all of us. Like, it don't matter.
Right.
It's not like oh, you're a man and you're gonna no, but you're a woman and you're not. Like, they don't care. Like, they don't care about gender. Matter of fact, they don't even care about age. Like,
no,
that's the scary part too. We'll get to that in a second. But like, especially when it comes to the woman part, like, you're not the first person I've talked to this about. I mean, you're the first person to talk about it on like this thing, but like, when it comes down to Black men not defending women, I'm raised by my grandma and my mom pretty much primarily. I've had like male figures come in and out of my life, but the only consistent people in my life have really been my mom and my grandma. I've heard my mom talk about like how back in high school, just like the disrespect that herself and all of her friends that were also Black were receiving from guys, where it was like they were going up and trying to like flip up her skirt or like just trying to like randomly hook up with them and stuff like that. It was like disgusting, and it was all from Black men.
Right.
And when it comes down to situations like this, or like videos of domestic abuse, or like, I don't even know, like I've seen a lot of videos in the past week of just like women getting beaten up by men on video, and then there's guys like laughing and being like, ha ha, that's so funny. Like, there's one video I shared on my story of this girl getting thrown in the trash can, and a bunch of Black guys are just sitting there like, ha ha, this is so funny. She's crying, and I'm like, what about this is okay? Like, this is not okay. So I don't know. I'm not sure how to fix the problem. I just know what I can do. But like, I guess, what do you think as a race, I guess specifically talking to men, what can we do, I guess, to help out Black women in our own, like, how can we stick together, I guess, more in terms of like not disrespecting pretty much the people that carried us? through our country, through all this hard times. Like, I guess, I don't know. I'm trying to find the word to word it, but do you know what I mean? Just
I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
I think acknowledgement, or like even like engaging the conversation without like defensiveness, is a big thing. Because oftentimes, like when this conversation starts, like a lot of times the reaction is like lots of eye rolling, or I do like Black women, I do this, I do this, I do this, but like not a lot of like actual listening. And I think like just like the acknowledgement or just the listening ear is like a really big thing. Just like in the healing process, or like just a camaraderie between, it's just to have conversation, to have understanding, and to acknowledge that it's actually an issue. Yeah.
You got anything, Ruthie?
No, I was going to say the part stuff.
Okay. So the transition into like another conversation I had. I talked to a mom recently on Facebook, and I wrote like this really long post about like pretty much just saying that a lot of the experiences that white people are saying, like, hey, I feel like I'm being blamed for something that's like from a million years ago, and I'm having to fight a battle that isn't mine, and like I feel like people are judging me for the color of my skin. I'm like, hey, same. So let's work together. Let's stop this thing. Kind of like, was my whole post. And I talked to somebody, and they were talking about how we had a couple facets of this conversation, but one thing that really grabbed my attention that kind of I felt like needed to be addressed was she's a mother, and she felt that one thing that the Black community does wrong is expose children to, I guess, this big mess of a world that we live in, and just trying to be like, hey, this is how you talk to cops, or this is how you respond to racism when it comes up, or here's places where you should avoid, and those kind of talks where it's like, I'm teaching you how to be safe, and that's the way I was taught about it. But from her perspective, it was taking away innocence from kids, taking away innocence from youth. I wanted to get both of your perspectives on that. I guess starting out, like, how did your parents talk to you about that? Like, talk to you about racism and how like you're different and all the other stuff. Like, how did you hear about that first?
We talked about a lot about racism, but mostly in like our parents are in a lot of ways intellectual. So like they were really big on voting and like the importance of like the fact that we didn't have a vote, or like just like systemic things. The police thing, I don't know if that was a very big element when we were younger. I remember Samuel had gone on some kind of trip to like Ohio or somewhere. He was in the middle of nowhere somewhere. Right. And I remember like that was the first time that my parents like kind of gave him the stay in groups, don't do this, don't do that. Make sure you don't rough around with your white friends in McDonald's, because maybe that's okay in the middle of New York, but not there. Those kind of conversations. But I don't think that necessarily that was the most prevalent thing growing up.
So, yeah.
I kind of, like I said before, we're 8 years apart, so like they were going through all these conversations, and I was just kind of like the elementary school toddler kind of toddling around, and like I heard stuff, and like I think I remember that conversation that they had with our brother, or like I remember hearing, like it's all kind of like fuzzy, because there was never like a blatant like sit down conversation with me. But I do remember hearing like them saying certain things to my brother, or even like over time, like reiterating things to me. Like, don't walk down the street with your headphones in and your hood on. Always make sure you have the receipt in the bag.
Right.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Was like told and I heard reiterated, but like saying like not really anything like involving the police. That was a huge.
Gotcha. I guess follow up. Do you wish, now that you're a little bit more older, that was perfect English. Okay, let's try that again. Now that you're a little older, sorry, I'm trying to find a way to, I guess now that you're older, do you wish that you learned more, or obviously you do know more than you did. Do you wish that you learned more about, like, I guess the world that you lived in, or do you, I guess, because I guess they told you a little bit. They gave you a little bit of a warning. It wasn't like a, hey, why is this person rude to me kind of a thing. It wasn't like a shock, praise God. But do you wish at any moment that you were taught more about, I guess, the world that we lived in, or do you think you were satisfied with what you got?
I wish that it was more. It's really hard, and I've actually had multiple conversations with my mom about this, because I think that in the Black community, we have the choice to separate ourselves from the experience and kind of like hold a blind eye to part of it, or not. And I mean, we were fine, and we found out about things later and we were fine, but maybe at the detriment of being a part of a community or making a difference or being socially aware in a different way growing up. And I think that sometimes I think it causes a divide. Because I remember, to be honest, I remember for a very large portion of my life feeling very separate from the Black community, because there were certain things that like weren't my reality. Like police brutality wasn't my reality growing up. Systemic things were, but like those aspects wasn't something that I was ever privy to, because I didn't, that was the part that we weren't privy to. We weren't going to, as I said, we weren't going to those schools. We weren't in those places where those things would necessarily be like everyday life. And so I think like I don't know, it creates a divide, and it continues even within, like, to be honest, like different classes of Black people. It creates a divide because sometimes we get it into our minds that if you have a certain amount of education, or if you have a certain amount of money, that like you won't get shot, or it won't be you. But like honestly, it could be any of us, you know. And so sometimes I feel like that's the thing that has caused like a divide, just in the mindset in the beginning, not having that growing up.
Yeah.
I kind of wish that there was more. Once, because for a portion of time we were living in Mississippi, and they had their experience. But I'm the only one of the three of us that went through public school all the way through. And there was this level of like, I kind of felt like it was like weird. Like I kind of felt out of place in a sense. Because there were like the Black kids and there were the white kids, and they were kind of like separated in a sense. And for me, it was like I didn't have the same like understanding of things that the Black kids did. So they're all talking about stuff, and I'm just kind of sitting there like, I have no idea what's happening. So I feel like the whole like kind of feeling out of place.
Yeah.
And like me personally, like I didn't fully understand, like be fully in touch with like Black culture and like that kind of like aspect of my life until like now.
Yeah.
Like I just got to the age where like I personally started to get an understanding. Like I started to venture out and do more things, but like I wish that our parents would have said more or exposed us to more than we were.
Yeah. Yeah, I relate to that 100%. I think the way I got exposed to this whole like racism and just discrimination experience was mostly through just word of mouth kind of a thing, where it was like, oh, your cousin so and so just got arrested for this, or this happened to your other cousin or so and so. But like, though I grew up in neighborhoods where I would hear about like other kids and other people like getting shot or getting arrested or like getting busted for doing something wrong or whatever, like I personally was never involved in that. And I also didn't really fit in with my culture just because like we talked about like toxic masculinity, and in Black culture, like I'm just not the most like like I'm not that dude. And I've never been. I've been like the dude that's like, oh, I kind of like musicals. Like musicals are cool, and then like I said those words out my mouth, and then got like Black guys is like, oh, cool, yeah, but like, I never really connected with my own culture in that way, and I think, unfortunately, that led to like some internalized like beliefs that weren't true. Like I once again I went to a school that was a little bit like more white than it was Black, so I would watch people that looked exactly like me get in trouble for like doing like minimal things. Like I got detention like every day in middle school, like every single day, and I wasn't really doing anything other than like talking, which people next to me were also doing, but I was the one that got in trouble for it. And they also saw people that were like looking like me that would also get in trouble for it, and I'm like, oh, we're just like bad kids and we shouldn't be doing that kind of thing. And like even when I saw like other Black kids like act up and act out in my school, because obviously we're frustrated and they're gonna do like certain things where it's like, oh, if I'm a horrible kid, I might as well just be a horrible kid, because if I'm gonna get in trouble anyway, then whatever. But seeing them act up and doing whatever, and hearing my teacher's comments of like, there he goes again, and like, oh, they're always like that kind of a thing, and I'd just be like, why do you have to be like that? Like, guys, like chill out. And then like looking at it now as an adult, I probably slapped myself as a kid and like, no, stop. But like, I definitely fell into that trap of like being ashamed of being Black and being ashamed of like being, I guess, myself, in that like, I don't know, being around people that are just so different from me. I felt like I was the problem.
Right.
And being in my own culture, it felt like I didn't fit in because I was so different, quote unquote, even though like we're all in the same boat. Like a gun doesn't ask like what your GPA is, kind of a thing. Like what degrees do you have? And I'm even looking at some stories in the news during some of the protests. I saw a senator get arrested, and he was Black, and they didn't really ask like, hey, what are you doing, and who, like whatever it was just pretty much like, hey, you're another Black man, and that's just that. Or seeing like videos of like Black women just getting like pushed over, and like just like, I don't know, there was one video that really bothered me of like this group of like 3 or 4 like white men just beating this one Black woman that's unarmed with like nightsticks, and she was just trying to like get them to stop touching her chest, and that was like the only thing she was trying to stop them from doing. She wasn't like, I'm resisting arrest. It was like, hey, stop, not an area that you should touch. And it was like they beat the heck out of her for it, and it was like, yo, I don't know. I have difficulty talking to people, especially now on Facebook, where it's like they refuse to see that this is a problem.
Oh yeah.
And I don't really know how to, I guess, respond in love, especially to other Christians. Like,
yeah.
Those are the ones that get me like really frustrated, just because it's like, hey, the God we serve stood up for so many oppressed groups. He himself was a part of an oppressed group.
Right.
I don't know. And like, even just talk about the Samaritans and how many times they come up just in the Gospels themselves, and how many times God's just like, hey, we should hang out, or hey, woman at the well, you're a Samaritan, right? And like,
right.
just all these times he interacted with them, and even like parables where he brought them up, but he brought them up. Like, it was kind of like, yo, he obviously cares about marginalized groups. He cares about like oppressed people.
Right.
Why don't you? Kind of a thing. So I guess to wrap up, because we've already been going for a long time, if you guys want to come back for another one, I would love that.
Sure.
Yeah, why not? Okay. But last question, more or less, is to respond to Christians. I guess, what would you say to a Christian, as well as I guess anybody else is having a hard time trying to understand what everybody's fighting for, what everybody's so upset about? And even the Christians that are like, oh, I support Black Lives, but not the Black Lives Matter movement, because they believe in like abortion, they believe in like gay lives matter, and like, I don't know, like, I just, sidebar, you don't have to answer that one, but I'll answer that one. I just personally think, yo, someone's sin shouldn't mean that they die on point. Like, it's just like, you have a problem. Anyway, talk to Jesus.
Right.
But yeah, I guess if you're anybody that's having trouble understanding the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as just understanding what everybody's upset about, what would you say to them?
I would say to check your circle, because if this is something that you have that much of a hard time having empathy towards, it's probably because your circle is all white, and you can't have empathy for something that you do not have community with. But at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff comes up, and like, when it's personal and it's when it's people you know. And I think even like with the whole video of George Floyd, it was such a sparking thing because it was in your face. Like, there was no, like, it was there, like, it was right there in front of your eyes. I think that shock value makes people feel a type of way. But I think without it, if your circle doesn't reflect it, if your community doesn't reflect it, if your church does not reflect it, if these are not the things that are on the forefront, if these things are on the back burner, if these things are not in your normal circles in your normal life, there's no way that you're going to understand the Black Lives Matter movement, because it's not in your life. But as Christians, one of our main goals is reconciliation. That's what the Lord has called us to. And so I would say check your circle, because if there is no reflection of anything other than what you look like, what are you reconciling?
I don't know like exactly what I would say, but I feel like people are getting so lost in like everything else. Like,
right.
They can't see what's actually happening. Or even like looking deeper into what's actually going on, looking deeper into what they're like, where this is coming from, because you're not just saying these things because like, oh well, like actually I was told this and that. It's like there's something in you that's making you like completely unable to see what's actually going on. And even like, I say this all the time, the Christians love to say like, oh, we love everybody. Like, we're so, it's like,
Sorry.
it's like if our mission is to love, if we're supposed to love on people, and at times that requires us to not only like defend the people who are being oppressed or the people who are being judged, but like if we're really to love, we have to put aside our own biases,
right,
and our own feeling towards these things, and focus on the matter at hand, and move from a loving place in that, like through that.
That's good. To address both of yours, like for Berachah's, I think a rebuttal that I often get when it comes to people that I know your circle is just white. And though you'll say, oh, I have a Spanish friend, I have a black friend, yada, 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 you're not, like, you have associates. Let's call them what they are. You have black
You won't
people.
have them to your house.
Right. Like, they won't come to your dinner, or even if they do, it'll be like, hey, so how's the weather? Or yada, yada, yada.
Right.
Like, you don't know these people's lives. You don't know their stories.
Right.
If that's you, if the boot fits, get involved in a real personal way where it's like, hey, I want to hear your story. I want to know you. And not so much in a way of like, hey, I just saw the news and I'm really sad. Like, it's like so sad. Like, yes, it's sad, but get to know them as a person, because they are a person. And as I've heard so many people say, I don't see color. So cool, don't see color. Whatever. But we'll talk about that as a whole nother topic. We're not going to touch that. It's a big old thing. But if that's your mentality, look at them as a person. Talk to them as a person. Get to know their story. We'll talk. I feel like we can't just leave that one untouched. I'm sorry. I thought we were on the last question, but I'm glad I said that, because I'm glad you guys had the same reaction as we did, because I talked to Ruthie about this before and it was fun. But the reason that so many people get aggravated with the phrase, I don't see color, I'm sure you think you know the answer, but maybe you don't. So please don't click off the video yet. But guys, when you hear the words, I don't see color, I know that people say it from a good, like, place where it's like, hey, I don't see color, and yada, 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 you're a human first, you're a human being, yada, yada. Like, it comes from a place where they think it's pure. But I guess, to you, when you hear that phrase, what do you hear?
Oh, jeez. The whole idea of not seeing color, I mean, color is a part of us. There's a history behind us. There's diversity, and there's beauty in diversity. And so I think when you say you don't see my color, you're not seeing like half me. It's just like, it's what it is. Like, my house doesn't look the same as your house. I'm louder. Things are different. Our lives are different. Our foods are different. If you're not seeing any of the thing that comes with my color, then what are you seeing? Just the things that you're comfortable with.
Amen. Ruthie?
For me, that's even really big.
Right.
Because yeah, like, it's coming from what they feel is a genuine place. Like, they feel like, oh, like, I'm telling you, like, I'm not acknowledging like that part of you. Like, that doesn't matter to me. I see who you really are. It's like, do you really see who I really am, or do you see how much you want to see?
Right.
It's like, you're seeing the side of me that is as close to you as you can get. And you refuse to see what is behind and what is the meaning of the history, the culture, like what Barack was saying, the history and the culture behind who I am. It's completely like lost the moment that people say that. Like, I need you to see more than just, like, you can see my color, but don't see the biases that come with it.
Right. That is key. Go off. That's good.
But, yeah.
Yeah. My problem with it's always been like, because I've heard that phrase said to me pretty much my whole life, where I've been in circles where people are like, oh, this happened on the news, yada, yada, yada. Well, I'm not racist. I don't see color, kind of a thing. Well, okay. Couple things. There are different types of racism. There's systemic racism, and that's built in the very structure of our country, where it's like, hey, you're a color for, you're a different race, you're a different whatever, so I'm gonna make these rules where people that look like this group will be okay and they'll benefit from it, and people that look like this group are gonna suffer greatly. So that's what we're talking, like, that's the big thing that everybody's talking about. But one thing that gets like kind of swept under the rug is individual racism, where it's like, hey, all black people like watermelon and fried chicken, all white people can't dance. Like, those are individual racism things where it's like, hey, I'm insulting you and that's not right, and I have biases inside myself, whatever. Usually those biases come from ignorance, and it's a problem, and it's hurtful, and nobody likes it no matter who it is, and nobody likes the comments that come from it. When you say, I don't see color, you're choosing into the same ignorance of saying, like, hey, all black people like watermelon and fried chicken, or all black people are more aggressive. You're feeding into that same narrative because you're choosing to be ignorant. You're not choosing to educate yourself about different cultures, or who I am as a person, or who, like, whatever. The reason I have somewhat sympathy for it is because I've talked to some people where it's like, I don't see color, I want to see you as a person. If that's your heart, see me as a person, but understand my culture, because my culture makes me who I am today, kind of a thing. Like, that feeds into who I am, my personality. You can't divorce the two. Pretty much, like, whatever environment, this goes for anybody, whatever environment that you've grown up in plays a role in who you are as a person. If I, as a black person, feel that if I, as a black person, feel fear whenever I'm around the cop, because of X, Y, and Z that happened in my life, or X, Y, and Z that I'm seeing on the news as a black person, that's part of, I guess, my narrative. Or like, oh, even simple things of like, oh, I get together with a whole bunch of people that are in my family and in my neighborhood, and we'll have a cookout, and that's just like a normal thing. Like, it's just a normal thing. And maybe it's not like something that you're used to, but like, that's something that's a part of my history, my family, like, whatever. Like, that's part of something that like created me, and like, these are part of my experiences. So like, I don't know. I hear the heart, and I understand that like, you don't feel like you're trying to be bad. Nobody's like out here just being like, you're a horrible person and you're choosing to be horrible and you suck. No. Like, it's nobody's saying that to you. It's just
annoying.
It is annoying. But please just try to hear, like, take that same energy that you have with I don't see color and all I see is human beings, and take into account that the culture of a human being makes that person who they are. So see color is what I'm saying. Don't be blind. Don't be colorblind. Colorblind is a disability. You don't want to be. It's not good. People want to see color. If you don't see color, it's a bad thing. I haven't heard anybody's feelings with that, but it is what it is. I can't see. So dang it. Anyways, I do want you guys to come back, because that, especially the women's issue, I feel like that wasn't talked about enough. It's just people only watch for so long. But I want to make another video just about that, if we could, if you guys are cool with that.
Yeah.
But two things. Me and Berachah are going to have a talk that is going to air after this one airs. So I'll link that one in the bio about race. It's with a bunch of people from our church, and you'll be able to hear a lot of our perspectives that are going to be really good. So I'm going to link that in the bio. Ruthie, if you're still working on that 20 person, Ruthie has some stuff. Amen. So Ruthie's been awesome. Ruthie's been awesome. And trying to use her voice as well, and trying to get other people to use theirs. She's going to come out with a talk very soon, so I'm going to link that as soon as it comes out. And bada bing, bada boom. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm not.
You're not.
Amen. We're gonna go with that. Okay. So thank you guys so much for watching. We will come out with another video on Monday, and you will see these two again, most definitely. But for now, peace out. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to. Once again, I'm not your mother. Goodbye.